two sons. I may have mentioned them before. One of them is married and lives in Oklahoma City right now, and the other one is has finished college and has been living in Nashville for the last year. So we get to see them occasionally as well. But glad to have Eric with us. He's I bounce a lot of things off of him, and he does the same with me. We have a great time together, good relationship. I consider him one of my best friends. So there you go.
Absolutely, yes. And y'all couldn't have a better interim pastor.
We agree.
That's why we're delaying this process.
Just dragging it out as long as you can. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah. Steve and I, he's one of my best friends. I think between us, we have about 75 years of ministry. I've been in ministry for 30 years, pastored a church or a couple churches in the Charlotte area for around 8 years back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then I went to the Summit Church almost a little over 17 years ago. And it was a little church that met in middle school, and then we blew up. And then kind of my role shifted from the group's pastor to the executive pastor to hiring a bunch of staff to going multi-site to, all those kinds of fun and complex things. And it's been quite a ride over 17 years. About 8 years ago, I just found myself meeting with a lot of pastors and church staff, kind of talking shop, how to help, fix and change, and I'm in pain and I need some help. And so I was in those conversations all the time, and I said, you know what, felt God kind of changing my calling a little bit, and really got into leadership coaching, got certified for that. And anyway, it's just been a fun ride. And finally, I think about 6 months ago, I felt like God telling me it's time to step out of the local church and really kind of go into this and that kind of thing. So all that kind of history, we're empty nesters now. Like, we're in the best, I think it's the best season of our life. My wife is a design consultant at Furnitureland South, if you're familiar with that furniture store, and kind of in the James. It is the largest furniture store in the world. I did not know that until she started working there. And but hey, thanks for having me here tonight. And David and I, Steve, had lunch, when was that, like 3 weeks ago? And we were just kind of talking about what you guys had been through. And so tonight, what I'd love to do is, number one, first of all, I would love for this to be like a cone of safety here. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to want to engage you, and I'm going to ask that you be authentic with me, and let's talk about what's going on. These are tough things to do. I feel for David. He has a big responsibility as a chairman of this process, and meeting week after week and giving input and being responsible for that. Congregations kind of put you guys in a place of big responsibility, and that's not to be taken lightly, and I feel that weight for you. So tonight, what I'd love to do is we're going to do some things where I want to get you talking, I want to listen, I want to hear kind of what's going on, and then I've got some things that if time permitting, that I'd love to share with you that I think could be helpful in this process. And so here we go. All right, so the first thing I'd like for you to do is, on the table behind you, there are a bunch of cards with a bunch of pictures on them. So what I'd love for you to do is take a minute, walk over to the table. I want you to choose a card that illustrates, in your opinion, how you feel the process is going. Now, this is not about David's leadership of the committee and that kind of thing, but this is just, what are your thoughts and feelings about how the process is going right now? I want you to choose a card that illustrates that, and then I'm going to ask you why you chose that card. So hop over to the table and choose a card that you feel like illustrates just the process right now. And Steve, I'd love for you to do the same. Yeah.
Good.
You gotta be quick. Well, and you know what? We might say different things about this, so.
Hey, there you go.
That's
Yeah.
it.
gravitate to this one.
Oh, sorry, Walt.
Mhm. All right, so Steve, let's start with you.
Okay,
This is-
so,
yeah, here we go.
Yeah, we've been in this process for, what, 4 months now, and I chose this. It's the arrow going both directions.
Okay.
Because I feel like, at this point, after the things that we've been through, I'm not sure what our direction is. That's just me.
Okay. It's unclear, a good way to put that, okay, great.
Is that
Great.
working?
Yep. And this is Jenny I'm talking to?
Yep.
Hey, Jenny. So, yeah, so it's unclear, and we'll come back to that in just a little bit. Wes, what about you?
So I got a dude reading a book in a field.
Okay.
I sort of felt like we started out, we were running on, a mountain trail.
Yeah.
And now it's time to settle back down and, regroup,
Mm.
think some, read a book.
Yeah. Regroup. That's a good word. Good word there. Awesome. April, what do you think?
All right, I picked this girl.
Okay.
Kind of two ways I can see it.
Okay.
One of it being introspective in how I see what I bring to my thoughts and processes and how I see people as they are coming across the table,
Mm.
and also the heavy burdensomeness of it,
Mm.
of this situation,
Yeah.
of this decision that we have to make I feel like for
That's good.
everybody. I mean, we have to make this hard decision, and then I feel very burdensome sometimes.
Yeah. It certainly feels heavy, right? It's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Kim, what about you?
Well, first with that one, I was thinking we could either be going backwards or
Mm.
forwards.
Mm.
Like, what's the direction? So I have every direction. My thoughts are just like just the possibilities of what our church could be. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
do the people need? Are they stuck? Are they open to more anything?
Right.
And
Right. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I wish it were that, and maybe it is that.
Mm-hmm. So the
But in a
second,
word.
yeah, the second word I heard you say possibilities, but what was the original description? You were like back and forth?
Different direction. I mean, going backwards or going
Mm-hmm.
forward. So possibility of what we haven't seen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There's possibility here. All right. Walt, what about you?
I chose the card that has a young man
Mm.
face to face with an old man,
It's good.
and it made me think back to our first meeting, and we had a stack of these to go through, and I can remember two people in the room
Mm.
saying, "He's too old," and they were right.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
were right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was thinking like,
Yeah.
I like this guy. I like the coat and tie, and he kind of thinks like I do, but
Mm-hmm.
it opened my eyes.
Yeah.
And I like their thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and I changed my mind.
Okay. All right. So what's the word that you feel like describes that card right there? If you could put that in a word or a short phrase?
Let's understand each other. I
Mhm.
can't put it in a word. Maybe you have a nice
Okay.
word for that.
I'm just going to use your words. Let's understand. Great. All right. David, what about you?
This doesn't necessarily reflect the optimism that I actually have for this process. But this kid is playing that game where you pull the things out, and it made
Jenga.
me look at this and think, we pull out the wrong block, the whole house comes falling down. And
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like we have a very delicate balancing act within this committee in going forward in this process. And there's a lot of responsibility.
I like that word, delicate. So yeah, so what I'm hearing is this is a delicate process. We're trying to be real careful and go about it the right way. I'm hearing now we feel unclear. Something happened, and we're probably going to get into that in just a minute because I'd like to know that. But something happened, something shifted, and now we're unclear about our direction. Going back to what Wes said, I feel like there's a regroup now that we have to do. We were moving, then all of a sudden something happened. Now we've got to regroup. Feels heavy. April, Kim, you said there's possibility. There's all this going on, but there's some possibility here that we need to really recognize that God could do. And then let's understand each other. Different generations can work together, but we've got to talk together so that we can understand each other, right? So I'm going to go back to some of these words right here. What happened to the team that caused the need for more clarity and to regroup? Tell me a little bit about the last maybe 6 to 8 weeks. And again, this is confidential. This is me. I don't know to the level of detail that you guys know what happened, but I'd love to understand more. Does that make sense? So how did we get here?
Well, I was just waiting to see if you're gonna talk. For me, it was when we brought Jacob in.
Okay.
And talked to the deacon body, and then it was the comments that we received after. There was some good comments, but it brought up a lot of questions that revealed a lot of fears. It revealed like their feelings that seemed a different direction that we were hopeful for, that they were just, just a lot of fears, and I don't like to base my decision on fears.
Right. Okay, so there were questions, there was fear. Kim, for example, like, do you remember a question or two that maybe was asked?
Like he's gonna get rid of Sunday. Is he gonna get rid of Sunday school?
Okay.
He's gonna make us do life groups. He doesn't care about the children's ministry. Like there was a bunch of unfounded.
Yeah.
But opened my eyes like, okay, we are an older church.
Mm-hmm.
Really, more than younger, I would say. I thought it was more of a mix. And we should be open to attract younger.
Right.
But how do you, but without offending the old, like,
Right.
how do you do that? And looking at, okay, yes, this is a very traditional looking, but we're not formal people.
Mm-hmm.
It just raised a lot of questions.
Okay. So fears and questions around, is he gonna get rid of Sunday school? Is he gonna?
Get rid of the choir.
Oh, the choir.
What is that
Yes. Yep.
in this day and age?
And did he have a choir in his church that he's in?
No.
He'd probably got rid of the choir. So Sunday school choir, he was gonna institute life groups. And then some notes about the older children traditional things here at First Baptist Salisbury.
Also, he was not Southern Baptist. He didn't know enough Southern Baptist.
Okay.
And
That was an issue.
that was an issue,
Okay.
that he didn't have that information.
Okay, but as a team, well, I don't want to move on to that question yet. So brought him here. He met with how many people in the church? 50, 100?
Probably 50 between
Okay.
deacons and
Okay.
trustees.
Okay. So they asked him questions, And you guys felt positive going into that meeting that he checked a lot of criteria you thought was important. But then you got him in front of the church, and there was pushback, is what I'm understanding.
Well, and negative side too was, he had been asked similar questions a couple times and he had answered. We knew what the full answer was. He gave a shortened answer.
Okay,
And I,
got you.
kind of left him hanging on many things.
Okay, so some of his answers may not have provided the kind of information that you're really hoping that he was going to share. Okay, how did that affect you as a team? How did that experience affect you as a team?
I don't think it, well, it made me sad, but for a team-wise, it just opened, I feel like it opened our eyes for more questions to ask, more things to be aware of. And I feel like we've always felt safe place in here just to say, because like Walt, I wanna understand why you feel that way, and you can bring me over to your side if I have a different opinion. So it's helpful to be able to talk about differing opinions.
Yeah, I feel like after that meeting, we were all somewhat on the same page.
Yeah.
Wasn't any division within this group.
How did it feel to feel good about a candidate, and then you get it to the church and they reject the candidate?
Not good.
Yeah.
But it
Well, they were wrong and we were right.
yeah.
That kind of, it wasn't an ideal meeting.
Okay.
No.
And I really don't, Jacob had just flown in, had a quick dinner, went in the sanctuary. I personally think he was overwhelmed because his other church was not, I don't even know if it had windows in it.
Wow.
And when he walks in,
Right.
if you saw our you've been
Oh
in
yeah,
the
it's a
sanctuary.
traditional church.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And for some reason, I just felt like he wasn't prepared.
Got you.
He was prepared with us, but when he got in there, and I don't think it was the pressure. I don't think he was nervous. They just didn't. They didn't get the really good answers that we did.
Got you.
I always felt like he was a wild card because coming into this, I just didn't want to like, this is what the guy's supposed to look like
Right.
exactly. What if it was the guy, not from the outside? So it was kind of a wild card, and I don't know if we would have gotten the same response. There would have been questions if we had called him here and said, okay, this is the guy. Because the other two people, it was, all right, this is who they want, I'll go for it. So would they have pushed back as much if we were saying,
In his audience
this is the guy?
were deacons and trustees and generally older people. I don't remember many young people in there.
Oh, but one thing he said the next day after that meeting was he felt like he was talking to an abused spouse. Some of the questions and reactions and comments.
Wow, what a statement.
So that made me sad and wonder, oh my goodness, do we need more therapy? Are they just afraid of anything else, even if it's exactly what they want? Are they just gonna be afraid for that?
Right, right. So let's camp out on that just for a second. Why would he say this church felt to him like an abused spouse?
Because we've kind of been an abused
We've
spouse.
been an abused spouse.
Okay, April, tell me about that. Like, what happened?
Well, I mean, so Pastor Lance left, and then
When was that?
2019, right? Yes, right before COVID,
Okay.
yeah, 2019.
And he was here how long?
17 years.
17.
Wow, so he was beloved and people really loved him. Okay,
So he retires,
okay.
and then, let me think, then we get Brian, that was, Brian and Rob just kind of took over preaching until we got,
Darren started July 1st, 2020.
okay, so then we got a new pastor, July 2020.
Okay. We'll call him Pastor Darren. Is that-
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
You can call him that. We have other names.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did Darren do, and how long was he here?
He was only here until February of 21,
April 9th.
April 9th of 21. was
Okay, and he started when?
July 1st,
July 1st
2020.
of 2020.
And it was
Okay.
Thanksgiving that we.
Wow.
that
And
it
by
all
Thanksgiving, it
exploded.
blew up.
Oh, no. What-
Darren misrepresented why he left his previous church and did not disclose significant events that took place during that time,
Ooh.
including having members of his staff at the previous church sign a non-disclosure agreement in which they would not speak ill of Darren Lambert. And so when the committee, when I was on that committee, contacted people on that church staff, they told us Darren was a great guy and they hated to lose him.
Oh,
When in
no.
fact he left under horrible circumstances and they got rid of him and never wanted to see him again. And then later we discovered the non-disclosure agreement, and we also discovered that he had actually doctored documents that were sent to us and did like the copy paste photo, and it was bad. It was fraud is what it was. It was fraud.
Yeah.
Documents that were, am I correct, that are in the state convention were
Yes.
not the documents that the church had.
Correct.
Wow.
He
Okay.
had altered them.
And even the state convention was not truthful in
Okay.
the circumstances regarding Darren because they had signed the non-disclosure agreement.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
now, if you look at the pastor search manual, there are questions in there that never existed before, and those came from our experience with Darren.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So you've got someone who lied and someone who really did a good job of covering up himself and protecting himself. So he lasts a year. The church finds out about it and says, hey, we need you to step away. Okay.
I
Okay.
don't think we would have found out unless his wife got arrested or something for.
Yeah, at Thanksgiving,
wife
she's
got
in
arrested.
jail because there's big domestic thing.
She tried to assault him and their daughter and
And
the
he called the cops on
sheriffs
her.
and
Wow.
everything.
It was ugly,
It was
Wow.
bad.
Okay.
so bad.
Okay. Man, that's unfortunate. Whew. On so many levels.
So then we got an interim.
Okay.
Well, no, cause didn't John come between Kenneth and Darren?
Mhm.
Okay, so,
Then came back.
and so then Darren leaves, and then we get John DeBell back,
Okay.
and he was here for almost 2 years.
Until May 30th, 2023.
All right, Pastor DeBell.
DeBell, John, you can call him John.
Okay.
He was here for almost 2 years.
Okay. And what was that experience like?
Great.
It was fantastic.
Okay.
He was the second best interim pastor we ever.
Second best. That's right. Okay, so he left because he was an interim.
Yes, because then we called Pastor Blackwell
Okay.
in 24.
May
Right.
30th, 23.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's right. It's 25 already.
All right, you're right. That's crazy.
In 23, that's correct.
Okay, and he just recently stepped away,
August 25th of 24.
so he lasted
A year.
a year. So you go from this hero that was loved by many people to really the last 4 or 5 years of just a lot of inconsistency, a lot of really some terrible things that happened, and you've kind of been in a pastor search committee mode for probably 5 years,
Yeah.
really. Gotcha.
And there were all kinds of things with Pastor Blackwell also.
You want to hear
Okay.
that statement?
Okay.
Brian suffered significant trauma as a child and is now working to get treatment. His trauma led to substance use that resulted in a driving while impaired charge while he was serving as a senior pastor at First Baptist Church. Pastor Blackwell and his family are still members and regularly, more or less, attend church services and other functions. He doesn't come that often because he now has a new job where he works third shift and he's not here, but his wife will be here and sing, right? And at least one of his daughters helps out with the Access Ministry, which is very much welcome.
That's really cool ministry of your church, by the way. I've seen a little bit of that. Okay, so going back to the abused spouse, this piece of history helps me understand why he would make that comment. Is there anything else about the church other than you've had some bad leaders that lied to you and didn't have a lot of care? Is there anything else about the church that would cause a comment like that outside of the bad experiences with the senior pastors?
There was a bad experience with the minister of education. He eventually was fired. Well, he wasn't fired. He was given an ultimatum by Pastor Darren and the trustees, I guess, or deacons. In any event, he left while Darren was pastor, and it was a bad circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just another thing that went on that created some drama.
When was that?
During
During
Darren, while Darren was here.
Okay.
During that,
That
less
year
than a
that
year, or
was-
that year,
Okay.
yeah.
And I would even say Lance sort of left
Yes.
abruptly.
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
And it's a sort of a secret to why he left. He
But
was
it
getting
was-
along with another guy.
But getting rid of Rod was the sequel to why Kenneth
Kenneth
left.
Hmm.
Those things were all part of the
Okay.
same thing.
Okay. Does the church, and I'm just asking questions to try to understand, and y'all feel this and live this every week, I don't. Do you feel like the church has lost faith and trust in the lead pastor position?
No.
Okay. So going through, I mean, when people are in abusive relationships, right, they lose trust in a lot of different kinds of things. But what I'm hearing you say is that people just understood they were just a couple of bad apples, and we can move on. And
A
get
lot of
somebody
people
good.
have the idea that God used our church to shut down Darren Lambert
Mm,
and to help Brian Blackwell. And if you look at that as a possibility, then that doesn't make you lose faith in the position of senior pastor.
mm-hmm.
It just makes you understand that there were two circumstances that were unusual.
Very.
And I think that's what goes back to my picture, is because now we've lived this,
Right.
and it's real heavy.
And you feel the heaviness of it. We
Yes.
got to get this right.
Yes.
Right. You feel that we have to get this higher. Right. Yeah. 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 That makes a lot of sense. Mhm. Yeah.
I think it's helped that we've had the leadership that we've had remain and
Mhm.
have kept it all together.
Mhm.
So I think that's why there is that sense of not the feeling of that against the senior I
Right.
still think because we've had
Right.
the leadership to keep us
Yeah.
going, it's been a good thing.
Are Brian and Russ in a healthy
Mhm.
place?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Your music's outstanding.
Yeah,
I
is.
mean, Russ does a great job
It is.
with that. That's something that we noticed right out of the gate. Yeah. So heaviness, delicate, things unclear. We're regrouping. We've been through a tough history. Even though we've been through a tough history and the abused spouse, word came up, there's a reason why that happened. And okay.
One thought also is, at this point through all that, does the church feel like, hey, we're doing pretty good on our own? We're
Mhm.
managing.
Kim, I think you've identified the pro and con of what you've been through. The pro is that the church has survived. The con is the next pastor is going to walk in and he's going to realize all this is going on without him. And he's going to want to change that. And how he goes about doing that is really going to determine how long he stays, right? I mean, that's just kind of so the church has survived, and the church is being led by lots of people who are stepping up and doing lots of wonderful things. But when the new pastor comes, he's going to want to know how those dots all connect. And if they don't connect, he's gonna start asking hard questions and he's gonna want to move forward with some strategy, and that is gonna be interesting to see how all of that happens. Do you feel like you're attracting the kind of people you want to attract as far as a lead pastor?
I do. I mean, there's a lot of them that aren't, but there's quite a few that I think are. I don't know.
I'm curious what younger, modern, whatever could bring to a traditional looking church to keep it not so stuck in its ways. Not trying to completely change it, but what
Right.
that just keeps going on in my head. Well, what does that even look? I don't even know what I'm thinking
Right.
about. But like, are all young, dynamic pastors looking for that certain look, that style?
That's a great question. To answer that question, I wanted just to do a quick exercise to kind of, because I want to talk about one of the reasons why I think you could attract the kind of person you ultimately want in this position. So we've all kind of seen this. I'm sure in your business, you've seen the life cycle of an organization. You've got your startup, you've got your growth phase, you've got your plateau, you've got your sunset phase. So let's not talk about candidates for just a second. Let's just talk about the church, about the life cycle of a church. We all have a life cycle, right? In our human bodies, we have a life cycle. Our organizations have a life cycle: startup, growth, plateau, sunset. If you could put on this graph, just kind of put an X of where you feel like First Baptist Salisbury is. Is it in a startup phase where lots happening, lots moving, you're brainstorming, you're running lean, or you're in your growth phase and lots of people are coming in and you're growing like crazy and your children's ministries are full and there's kids everywhere and kids ministers pulling their hair out because they don't know, all that kind of stuff. You feel like you've plateaued. You feel like you've been here for a while. Numbers are the numbers are consistent. There's nothing high, there's nothing low, but it's just, things are steady, consistent, plateaued. Or do you feel like you dropped a little bit? You feel like things have gotten stuck, that you're in too deep of a routine, you've lost some members, you're losing money. Like, where do you feel like on this life cycle the church is?
I would put us a little bit past plateau, just because, our numbers are,
So about right here?
higher up. Yeah, keep going. There you go.
Okay.
I would agree with that, but I have a question. A plateau doesn't always lead to sunset, does it? Can a plateau not also be a stopping point prior to more growth? Because I think that we could go up as easily as it falls off.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Yeah. So, Wes, you feel like that's where the church is, right there? Does everyone agree?
Yeah.
Reasonably? Okay. So, let's talk about the kind of, let me ask this question. Where do you want to be?
Well, we all talked about growth early on.
Mm-hmm. So we're somewhere around in here? So about right here? Okay. All right. So reality is here. There's the real and the ideal. Reality is you're there. The ideal is we're in a growth phase. People are coming in, it's exciting, money's coming in, everything's up to the right. It's where we all want to be, right? What kind of leader do you need to have to be in this position? Just describe them for me. Throw out some words.
Energetic.
Energetic.
Dynamic.
Sincere.
Charismatic.
Non-Calvinist.
What'd you say?
Good with the ladies.
Good with the ladies?
Yes.
Yes. Good with
Oh, boy.
ladies. There you go. Oh, that's great. So Kim, going back to your question, you know, how do we attract that modern guy who wants to, you know, really understands growth and really wants to make, you know, to do, he's energetic, he's dynamic, he's loving, he's sincere, he's charismatic, he's non-Calvinist, and he's good with the ladies. Well, we don't want him too good with the ladies.
Women in leadership.
Women in leadership, yes. Yes,
Yes.
yeah, that's a better way to put it. Women in leadership. And you know, just I just want to say something about that. If that's the questions they're asking, that's the wrong guy. You're just they're not mature enough to know that yet, but they're asking the wrong questions. That's not anyway. That's just
Well, and the cherry on top is the wife who is equally involved in ministry and dynamic and good with the
Right.
ladies and
Yeah.
a role model and
yeah.
involved in
That's true.
women's ministry.
I want you to think back to when you were dating. I want you to think back when you were dating your who's now your spouse. And I want you to think about the things that you were looking for in a spouse. Okay? So let's just kind of play with this just for a second. Tell me I don't want to erase your words there. Tell me about some of the things you were looking for in a relationship. For
Loves
somebody,
Jesus.
for somebody you would marry. They love
Loves
Jesus.
Jesus.
Yep. Okay. What else? I know
Fun.
they're fun. Okay. Yes. Fun is important.
Laughter.
Laughter. Gotta have a sense of humor. If you don't, it's gonna be a long life.
Good cook.
Good cook. Yes.
Just kidding.
Yes.
Good communicator.
Communicator. Yes.
But I probably wanted somebody that had a similar background to me. I wasn't out there looking for
Yeah.
somebody that was really different.
They shared my values.
Yeah.
What else?
Hygienic.
Hygiene. Yeah. Clean.
Good dresser.
Yes. You know. Good dresser. Yeah, dress well.
Sharp.
Yes.
Every girl's crazy.
So you weren't looking for a roofer?
Someone who would love their family.
Someone who would love
Love their family.
Love their family. Yes, that's good. Love their family. Okay. Anything else? Anything else important to you, Steve? What was important to you when you were dating?
I think always attractive
Okay.
and important quality.
That's important.
Most people want to go to the other things first. But
I didn't want to say it.
Good teeth. Good. Yeah.
Clean, good shoes.
Yeah.
If your shoes are good, they're gonna be.
Right.
Very
Gotta have good. Gotta have good shoes. Gotta have good
If your shoes are
teeth.
scuffed, they don't care.
I
Right.
wish I could say the first thing I noticed about her was that she loved Jesus, but that was not the first thing. I
Right.
It came along.
Yes.
Well, I met mine at church, so. Alright.
Yes. Yeah. You know, here's the thing when you're choosing your spouse, and it's a lot like choosing a pastor. When you want a spouse that loves Jesus, that's fun, there's a sense of humor, they love to cook maybe even, They're a good communicator. They have great values that are your values. They're clean, they dress well, they're sharp, they love their family, they're attractive, they have great teeth, and they have a love for shoes, right?
Clean shoes.
Clean shoes, right?
Clean
Right.
shoes.
Here's the question you have to ask yourself. This is what I want in a spouse. The question is, can I attract that person? And if I can't, I need to clean my teeth up. Got to get some new shoes. I need to start loving my family. I need to dress well. I need to have good values. I need to be able to communicate better. Because you can't attract this kind of person if you are not that kind of person.
And sometimes we'd rather say, so you saying there's a chance?
One in a million.
There's one in a million.
But there's a chance. Is this a metaphor for attracting a new minister?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
To attract this kind of a pastor, there is something about the organization that they'll have in common. And so I think this is less about looking for a pastor, and it's more about who are we as First Baptist Salisbury, and who do we want to become? Because if you know that, that makes you attractive. That makes you attractive. And I think the more that you're aware of, hey, this is where we are, kind of going back to what Wes said, and then you all agreed. But then you said, but we want to be here. What does this look like? What does being in a growth phase look like? Or in that, on that growth bell curve there. And churches that are growing are churches that are pretty value driven and mission driven. And everything else in the church feeds into that mission. There's no sacred cows. We're talking about how staff are hired. We're talking about how they spend their money. We're talking about how decisions are made. We're talking about those types of things. And so when churches are serious about going back to this place, what happens is you start thinking like a startup again. And then the bell curve goes up, and you're in startup growth, and you got to be careful about plateauing again, and then the sunset phase. So you just go, whoop, this is where we want to go. And so here's some behaviors that we want to practice as we think about the future, because if we want to attract that type of pastor, then who we are as a church has to be able to attract him. Does that make sense?
If we interview with the kind of mindset that, hey, we've been without a pastor, we've made mistakes, we're desperate. I don't mean to really say that, but
Sure.
You know, we're really looking and we really want to find somebody. That's probably not the image that we want to portray, right? We'd have to have a lot more confidence than that.
Well, I think for the right guy in this scenario that really wants to grow a church, the things I'm kind of giving you insider information right now. This has been my world for 30 years, and Steve's world for 45. If you want to attract a guy who is very interested in growing a church, this is going to be hard to hear and it's going to be hard to say, but the typical Southern Baptist church way of doing church is typically the reason why it's in a plateaued situation. And so thinking more in terms of how do we follow the leading of the Holy Spirit with good, sound business principles and a whole lot of love and unity with one another, that's how you move forward. And so there's a lot of things like, you want to attract a really good person, or, how do we make decisions? By the way, who is this pastor reporting to? If y'all were to call him tomorrow, he would say yes. Who is he reporting to?
Trustee.
How many trustees are there?
12. Are there more? 12?
Okay.
12 trustees.
Okay.
And we have excellent trustees.
Okay.
We have professional men and women
That's awesome.
that do a great job.
That's awesome. How many people do you report to at work?
0.
One. So
One.
you own your company. You report to one. Kim, do you?
Myself.
Yeah. Okay. So, you see where I'm going with that? This is just a small example. A pastor does not want to report to 12 people. He's not going to do it. It's going to be hard to call a pastor here and say, I want 12 bosses. How would you feel if you had 12 bosses? And all 12 of them found a way to come visit you before your sermon on Sunday to give you input about something. That's going to be a tough sell.
But doesn't any pastor in any church report to a number of people as opposed to one or two?
Typically, in my experience, there's an elder board of about 4 to 5 people
Okay.
that he will report to.
Okay.
Now,
And-
depending on the size of the church, he could be reporting to up to 200 people.
Yeah.
Because in some churches, the congregation feels that responsibility.
Mm.
You have to get I think this church is a little bit larger, and so that number goes down some, but it's still quite a few.
Can I ask a question? I don't know
Yes.
if this is the appropriate time.
Yeah.
So when the term elder, maybe I don't understand it. So what does that mean as far as like, does that take away do they get all the say? Do you know, like, in an elder-led
I know exactly what you're
place,
saying.
does that mean that the elders get all the say, or does the church still have a vote? Does that make sense?
And there's elder-led and elder-ruled. So
Well, that's why I'm
elder-
asking the
yeah,
question.
Yeah, so
Because
maybe-
I don't
yeah, I don't know.
understand that.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience. I pastored in a Southern Baptist church in Charlotte for about 4 years. It about put me in the hospital because of the things that we're talking about right now. And I have been in a church of 5,000 people, multi-site, hired a bunch of staff, and we had excellent systems. And we got things done. And I want to draw for you a governance structure that is healthy and that I've seen work really well. Okay, I don't want to lose you, but I just want to give you something that I feel like could be helpful. So at the summit, we had an elder board, we had a stewardship team, and then we had a staff management team. Okay, and the way that we were functioned was I think there were 5 elders, and they met with our pastor once a month. And these were people who had spiritual oversight over him, but they did not flaunt that. Like it wasn't something like, oh, you report to us, and we're going to make you remember that every month. It wasn't that kind of. Our pastor was one of the elders, and so elder is a shepherding responsibility. And what they did is they shepherded and held him, ultimately responsible. He would meet with them and he'd talk about, hey, here's what I'm preaching on next month. Here's some of the big, things that we're doing as a church. And they would, he would get their input on some of those bigger pieces of things that we were doing as a church. But nobody really met with the elders outside of him. And then me, they would invite me in a couple of times a year. Eric, tell us how the staff's doing. Tell us the culture of this. Tell us how, the operations piece. Tell us, how all that's going.
So in our current setup,
Okay.
could that be like our other like Brian and Russ, would they be elders?
So then we had a staff management team. Okay. So the staff management team, this is the one I was responsible for, and this was all of our staff, and we had 50. And so what we would do is I was responsible for all of our staff, and our staff made the decisions of the church. They made the daily decisions of execution and implementation for the church. They weren't calling so-and-so elder and asking them for permission to do anything. It's if they weren't operating well, then that was the problem. So we didn't even have deacons. We had small group leaders, and we can talk about that. But we had a staff management team, and then we had a finance team that met me and my lead pastor and our finance person. We met once a month with them. And this is a lot of how we made decisions as a team. I was responsible for all of our hiring before we got an HR director, so that was a huge burden off of me. But our lead pastor meets with the elders. Finance team meets once a month to discuss budget on a high level. We're not talking spreadsheets. We're talking, what are the big variances? What are the big things we need to spend money for? Are we over budget, under budget? Do we need to be raising money? Those types of decisions. And then staff decisions, that was, as long as we had money, we had an HR director who reported to me, and we worked together to staff both of our locations. This was a model of church decision-making that helps people feel like they can make progress and make a difference. Wes, imagine if roofing better than anybody else in this room. But imagine if you had to call 12 people who knew nothing about roofing to ask them for how to roof and decisions about roofing. It's a bad model, and it doesn't work. To attract somebody like this, a model of church is really, really important. They're not going to come in and report to 12 people. And I think that's something that, I don't know how much influence this team has in those conversations, but that's something and that's just one instance.
So how does someone become an elder?
So they are invited into the process by the lead pastor. He chooses the elders. And with that, those elders have choices too. So, but to be honest,
but they're not staff.
They're not staff.
Okay.
They are volunteers who have different jobs outside the church, and they meet with our lead pastor once a month. Hey, what's the spiritual condition of the church? And they kept it spiritual. Anything financial related, hiring related, that's all staff. Now they can talk about them, but they don't have influence in this realm unless they were to call me and meet with me and go, hey, Eric, we have a question about so-and-so. Can you help us understand, that kind of thing. So, and then this is our finance team, and then here's our staff team, our staff management team. And all of those worked in concert together to help our lead pastor feel like, okay, I can drive this mission forward because we have a system that helps move things along. Think of it this way. You have an immune system in your body. You have a digestive system in your body. You have a what's the word with the brain? Neurological, yes, system in your body. These systems all work in concert together to help your body function, right? What we're talking about for long-term success for you guys and knowing that you need to get this hire right, there's some systems I think that could be looked at to be able to attract this person right here. I know nobody wants to pause the process.
No, it's not
Yeah.
that. It's that we've been given a specific responsibility.
Right.
And that has nothing to do with changing this.
Right.
We can't do that.
Yeah.
We can have influence, but
Yeah.
we can't do this.
Yeah.
We have a system that's in place that we have to bring somebody into.
Mm.
And in order for that to happen, the bylaws in here have to change.
Right. And
That's a can of worms.
yeah. Well, and guess what? When we were a young church, we were a Southern Baptist church. Went to Southern Baptist Seminary, Southern Baptist, but we changed our bylaws so that it would not hurt our effectiveness as a church. I still believe what Southern Baptists believe, but how we make decisions as a church and how we run our church. The Southern Baptist Constitution was built much like the government's constitution to not change, right? And so we had to adjust, and we went to a new decision-making model that would help us grow as an organization. And I think my hope and my prayer that I hope you guys will think about is, if we can take a look at some of these things, we can attract the kind of person that we really want.
So we have deacons, so where
Okay.
would the deacons fit into that? Do they fit into that at all?
So what we
Cause our role
yeah,
right now is that we are just,
right.
we don't make any decision as far, well, we do make decisions, but we're more of a flock, like our families.
Right.
We're trying to minister to
right.
families at this point, so where would that fit into that organizational
So
chart?
what we did organizationally is we started small groups. They could be considered Sunday school classes. They can be considered small groups. It's the same. It's a small gathering of people studying God's word. Now, whether they're doing it in Sunday school or small groups at McDonald's, who cares? They're together and they're talking about God's word. We appointed a leader over every small group, and that was our deacon. And we didn't call them deacons, but we said, if you're a Sunday school teacher or you're a small group leader, we're asking you to serve the needs of the people in your group. Check up on them, see how they're doing, pray for them, help them, assist them, connect them when they need it with help or whatever. But we trained our leaders in our church to act as deacons. Now, if we'd have said deacon to them, they would have been very confused because they don't know what. In our church, they don't know what that word means. But Steve's told me, y'all have got 30 deacons and they do well. They're serving well. I think that's fantastic. That's fantastic. But I will say the new pastor coming in is going to, if he's the person Kim's talking about, this kind of person, he's gonna start a small group ministry model. And that's okay. That's nothing to be afraid of, but it can run alongside Sunday school. It's because it's going to do the same thing. So the church shouldn't be threatened by that, but it's going to be what his experience is and what he's accustomed to and comfortable with.
And we've run into with deacons, other churches having a whole different idea. Like
Right.
their deacons, they only have 12 and they run all the finances and they it's a whole different structure with the same work.
Right.
So it is almost like small group leaders now.
Right.
It's family ministry.
Right. Yeah, we had to ask some hard questions to go, what is a model that we can use that is going to help us grow? And we shifted a lot of things. We had to reach out to a lawyer. We had to redo our bylaws. Now there are some things we still do by congregational vote, whether we're going to buy land or call a pastor, things like that. The only time we'd have a board of directors meeting is when we would vote on our budget every year, and it took about 5 minutes. Sometimes we do it on a Zoom call, but that stuff had been seen a lot. But so I've said a lot. What's resonating? David, you look like you're thinking.
I mean, I've been on the trustees before. I mean, it's a 3-year little stat. I feel like it would take us 4 years to switch over to this. Like,
Yeah.
It's, I guess what I'm asking is, what can we do with our current setup to attract? If we can't attract somebody, let us know. But What steps can we take to further this process, sort of with our current setup model?
So, Wes, that's a tricky question. And the reason why that's a tricky question is where you placed yourself on here. Because if nothing changes, good preaching doesn't fix this. I wish it did. Oh man, I wish it did. But good preaching doesn't fix that. If nothing changes, then it's going to continue down this downward slope. Now, short term, you could, let's just get who we can get. Let's continue the process. Let's see if we can find the person that we can live with and pray and hope for the best. Or I think you could consider something else. I don't know if you want to hear it, but I think you could consider something else. I think it could be really helpful and I say this because of some of these words up here. Heavy, we need to understand each other, we need to regroup, things are unclear, and things are very delicate right now, very sensitive. I think the church, and I'm just gonna make some recommendations, but I think this could really help. I think you could do an 18-month interim. I think you're already in that process. So we got check one. We got yes, we got check one. So I think you could do an 18-month
I'd be a little further down than
oh goodness. So I think you could do an 18-month interim, very intentional, okay? And then what you would do is you would do a revitalization emphasis. In other words, you would look at everything in the church and do a complete ministry audit and go, how do we bring this into 2025?
You know, I think that's been a desire, but the hesitation has been, well, let's wait and see what the new guy's gonna do.
Right, right. And to which, Kim, what I would say is, I think you would have a better chance of attracting somebody really good if they knew the church had that much self-awareness to go, oh, they're fixing some of these issues themselves, they're ready to go. That sounds interesting to me. And so I think when a potential pastor sees a group of people trying to work together to overcome some of the issues of the church and just make things better, faster, stronger, smoother, more fun, whatever, that's attractive. I think it goes back to that. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to repel the wrong guy and attract the right guy. Because you could attract a guy who just wants all control, and then that's a problem. And so, we could talk about that. But anyway, so what you do is you have a revitalization emphasis, and you would select a team. And this group of people are, you guys remember, I'm old enough to say this, but do y'all remember the commercials of E.F. Hutton? And they would say, whenever that person, E.F. Hutton, would speak, everybody would stop and people would listen. You would want to gather your E.F. Huttons on that team. The people that everybody else in the church follows. Now, not all of them may be a good fit for it, but you want your influencers on this team. You want your people that really have a vision for the future, and have a lot of influence. You want them on this team, and this team works with someone who can help them really go through the entire church, top to bottom, and go, here's all the things that we need to address. And this is things like our systems. These are our ministries. So how we do what we do. How do we do children's ministry? How do we do student ministry? How do we do senior adult ministry? How do we do a worship service? How do we, all of that kind of thing. And then what ministries do we need to keep, and what do we need to cut? Churches are notorious for trying to do too many things. So how do we simplify? We need to talk about money and how we're budgeting. We would talk about the future. What do we see? What's the possibility for this church? What can we dream up? One of the interview questions I think would be really, really helpful for the new pastor is, if you're our pastor for 5 years, tell us how our church would be different. What do you see? And describe it in detail. Well, we're going to have a band on stage. We're going to have a digital screen right behind the pulpit. So when I'm teaching, I'm going to point out to the words. We're going to hire a tech person and an IT person who's going to build a digital platform here. And we're going to have a web, we're going to have life groups, and we're going to have, you just want this guy to throw up his vision in front of you, and for you to go, oh man, is that where we see us going? Is that, I get the sense that Jacob shared some of those things with you, and y'all got excited because of some things he shared, and then it didn't go as well in front of the rest of the church. And y'all may be more progressive than the rest of the church too. That's something to think about. Your thinking might be more progressive. So it's no wonder why. Maybe you got some criticism, maybe you got some, negative feedback on that. But I think a 18-month interim, a revitalization emphasis, and then it's a full reinvention. And then by this time, you get finished at 18 months and go, here are the big 3 things that we want to accomplish as a church, that we feel that God is leading us to do. And when you're interviewing, your guys, you'll know right quick if those priorities resonate with him. And of course, some of them may, some of them won't, but at least he'll know, hey, if I'm going to this church, this is important to this church. I need to do that. They said they wanted to do X, Y, Z. Okay, that's going to be my priority too. Now he's going to have probably his own things too. But see how this is a process, and it's not necessarily like, how do I get a date? But it's like, who am I, and who's a good match for who I am in a relationship. Does that make sense? Thoughts, questions? I want to be sensitive to y'all's time because it is 8 o'clock. Are there any specific questions you have for me about the search process, or about anything that I can help answer? Because I don't know if this has been real helpful.
Our system has worked well.
Mm-hmm.
If our trustees have made good decisions, we've had CPAs, and
Yep.
they do well.
Yeah.
The deacons, they do a great job.
Mm-hmm.
If we had the deacons, if they swapped what they're doing now, they would work. We've
Yeah.
got the right people in the right places. but what you're saying makes sense.
Yeah.
We have an HRC, but right now they're trying to redefine themselves because so many things, performance plans and
Right.
annual reviews, they
Right.
haven't been done in so long.
Right.
The staff would just be shocked to have
Right.
one.
Right.
They have to. My question, and so many of these candidates that we've seen, they're from little worship centers of a few hundred people,
Mhm.
and they're so informal and casual. And to come here, they're gonna have to spiff it up a bit. They're gonna have to clean their shoes.
Yeah.
and
Right.
Yeah.
They have to.
That's
And
right.
I don't. My question to you is, can they do it?
Mm.
Can any one of at least two of them, can they really come in with clean shoes and do well?
Mm.
Is that a hard transition?
That's generally not what this guy's looking for. Now, that doesn't mean that's not what anybody's looking for. But generally, that's not what that person is looking for. I think if you're talking about somebody who's in their 40s, maybe even early 50s, their generation they're very much of it's much more casual. Now, that doesn't mean less spiritual, but it's going to be more casual. And what I want you to think about, what I would want you to think about if you do any of this or look for a new pastor, you need to be thinking, how do we build a church that our grandchildren are going to love?
I do.
Because that's really what you're doing. And what are the things that the grandchildren love? I've never even been to your children's ministry wing. I've started actually coaching Joy, where we had our first session a couple weeks ago. But I've never been to it. But I can tell you, without even going to it, you need to drop $100,000 into it right now. And I've never even seen it. And that's no knock on Joy, but that's just young families. They want to know you love their kids, and they need to see money behind that. So, Walt, I hear that in your voice, and I think there's some ways that we've done church in the past that have served well. They've served us well. The things that I love about our church, my kids go, Dad, seriously, we don't, that's not us. You may like that kind of music, but we're not playing that music. We don't. So it's recognizing and really giving this new pastor the freedom to go build a church that our grandchildren will love. And we're going to give you the freedom to do that. Now, not a blank check. There's going to be some accountability. But if a guy wired like this hears something like that, he's going to go, oh man, that's attractive. That sounds exciting to me. And so if you're going to ask a guy to come and continue to do what you've been doing and to get more of this, I'll gently push back and ask you to really pray and think about that. Because if the structure doesn't change in the church, it's going to be, I think, hard for you to attract the kind of person that you ultimately want that can give you a 10-year run.
I can see that as a way of, if we do the changing, people could be more apt to embrace it than if someone walks in the door and says, I'm gonna change it.
That's right.
If we took 18 months and said, we're gonna change it,
April, you're exactly right.
that's where they drink the juice.
That's right.
We get them drinking the
That's
juice.
right. That's right.
If we do it, then if someone else comes in and does it.
Because they trust you.
Yeah.
They already trust you. They don't trust this new person coming in. They don't even know who this person is. And based on the history, can we trust them? And it's going to take a good 18 months just to build trust with people, right? So
I'll be straight out honest. That that scares the bejesus out of me.
Right. Right.
I'm just gonna
Yeah.
let you know. I mean,
Yeah.
because I'm that old school Southern Baptist girl.
Right.
It just worked.
Yeah.
But I know,
Yeah.
I'm smart enough to know
Yeah.
that that's not working anymore for
Yeah.
a lot of places.
Yeah.
I get it. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
I'm trying to take
Yeah.
off my rose colored glasses
Yeah.
because I like it there.
Yeah. And I'm not challenging you to put your beliefs on the shelf, your theological beliefs on the shelf. Not at all. It's just the way that you're doing church. He's going to walk in and go, I can't report to 12 people. That's a heart attack waiting to happen for this poor pastor and his wife. That's just a small example. But I think if some of those changes are initiated by this carefully selected team who's been given authority by the church to begin a revitalization process and to work with somebody who can help them and give them some direction and expose them to some models in ministries that are thriving, I think could be life-giving. And all this is obviously not going to happen in 18 months. That, there's going to be some things that could be taken care of, and then there's going to be some things that you may need to that new pastor may need to help you with. But that's going to be an attractive place to be, and you're going to attract a good person because they're going to go, they're already working on themselves. I trust them. I trust them to help me make some changes.
It's a model like best practices in the corporate world.
That's right.
A lot of companies 10 years ago went through that, and it's difficult to do, but
Yeah.
you come out on the other side stronger.
Yeah. And just, for instance, to revert back to a growth model, this is, your biggest changes are going to be how we make decisions, how we spend our money, the staff that we hire, technology. And by that, I mean, all your digital stuff, your apps, your websites, the things that you're doing in your worship services, and every ministry that you've got, all of that. That's going to attract younger families because that's the world that they live in. But so I've said a lot. Final things that are resonating in your mind. What do you think God has kind of said to you in this meeting as we've been meeting together? Or thoughts and feelings, concerns, or Steve don't ever ask Eric to come back here again.
I'm sorry, go, Kim.
We don't know what we don't know.
Mhm.
Right? We don't know what we're missing. We don't
Right.
know so it's huge to dive in and
Mhm.
figure it out and learn some new things and see, what could help. I mean, I know the third
Right.
floor, like I walked in the fall
Yeah.
and just thought, oh man, it's still like 1950 up here.
Right.
Even though it's had some fresh paint.
Right.
But yeah, I've also been in some children's ministry in churches that, the parents, kids love, the
Yeah.
environment just feels like they love the kids.
Mhm. And Kim, I think it's gonna take that kind of growth mindset to really see this through, because there's gonna be roadblocks. There's gonna be, that's not how we've done it. This is a deviation from, this is why nobody does, there are businesses that aren't even in business anymore because they didn't change. I think Kodak, is that even still in business? Do they even sell cameras where people can get film anymore? No, I got your cell phone, man. Just take the picture with your phone. That kind of thing. Yeah, great observation. Walt, what you thinking?
Well, I feel like I've defended the system that we have in the past because it has worked.
Right.
But it's clear that the revitalization emphasis would be an important step for our church to take. it needs to be done. Just because it's worked in the past doesn't mean it's gonna work in the future.
And it's, because financially we're fine,
Mhm.
people are, like, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want fine?
Right.
We want growth, we want
Right.
to see what it could do.
Right.
So we have to do something different.
And this is my wife and I've been here several times. We came to your Christmas tree thing. That was awesome. Sat in the back row of the balcony. Came to your Easter service, came to another service before that. Like, I see the energy in the congregation. Like, I see the possibility, going back to your word, I see the possibility that could be here. So April, what you thinking?
I appreciated the break. I know that might have not been where we were supposed to,
Sure,
we were supposed to talk
yeah.
about,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes me, about the elders and all that, how that, cause that has scared me in the past, I
Right.
guess, just because I didn't understand it.
Right.
So, I appreciated that break, so it puts me more at ease as to what
Mhm.
we could potentially be bringing in that more contemporary style, so to
Mhm.
speak, you know what I mean, like,
Mhm.
from that, cause that's been my thoughts the whole time. How do you bring somebody in who has been in a more contemporary church to, we're not that
Mhm.
necessarily, there are times that we try to be,
Mhm.
and that we kinda wanna be, but it's not always been that way.
Mhm.
And that's been one of my thoughts this whole time, is how do we incorporate all of that together
Right.
and make that work with people who still wanna be in tradition.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. Yeah.
I mean, I like tradition.
Yeah.
I like my tradition too, but I wanna be
Right.
in the today too.
Mm-hmm. Wes, what you thinking?
I guess my biggest fear is that if we brought this plan to the congregation, it would not go well.
Mm.
It needs to be done.
Right.
But I can see it maybe being done through the trustees, and the next pastor maybe. 'Cause I mean, we're on 5 years without a steady pastor.
Right.
People
Right.
aren't wanting to wait another 18 months to
Yeah.
make that happen, which,
Yeah. That makes sense.
I understand the decision-making process and all that, and, how we need to, this is very vital for, if I want my grandkids to
Mhm.
be members here,
Mhm.
for us to still have a viable congregation,
Mhm.
something like this needs to be done. But I just don't know if our church is ready to do it yet if we brought it.
You think?
If we brought it to
Hey,
them.
you think this would scare them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If we told them we gonna wait for another couple years
Yeah.
before we found somebody.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But no, I see this sort of redoing the structure, as a trustee thing, and
Mhm.
I think it would take a while.
And could you not just pull some elders out and still have the rest of the things in place?
Something you could do that would maybe accelerate some of this is you could create a revitalization plan. And you call Joe as the pastor. And during the interview process, after you've created the plan, you go, "Now, Joe, listen, we're so excited that you're interested in being the pastor at First Baptist Salisbury. But we've done the hard work, and we've created a plan that we feel like needs to be implemented. And trust me, if it's the right plan, it's going to include a lot of things that he's going to want done anyway. And so you could do a lot of the hard work on the front end to go, here's all the things that we feel like this is going to help bring our church up to date and help us to push us back into the growth zone over here. And we just want to make you aware, and maybe we can do that in our next meeting. We could talk about priorities of the church and discuss that. But we just, here's our reinvention plan. And this has already been shown to the congregation. They've already seen it. They're already aware of it. They've voted and approved it. And we're going to work with you, and you're going to work with us. And here's the plan. And let's work the plan together. That way you don't have to wait an 18-month, period of time. But that's clarifying for a pastor to know, okay, you're going to need to rebuild the whole children's ministry. You're going to need to restructure what Sunday night and Wednesday night look like. You're going to need to restructure the rhythms of how we do church. Are we going to do VBS, or are we going to do more of a kids camp feel? Are we going to do Sunday school, or are we going to do life groups, small groups? Are we going to do both? Are we going to shut one down and start the other? Having all those conversations to go, this is what that revitalization. And Joe, here's what we want you to do. That's life-giving to that pastor. That's not that's not insulting or hindering. That's, oh man, you guys already know this? Y'all have already done the hard work and put the study in and decided what you want? Because I guarantee you the things that are going to be on that plan are things that he would do anyway. And April, going back to what you said, if the church already buys into it and says, okay, these are the changes, that there'll still be resistance to some degree, but it won't be like it would be. Steve, what are your thoughts?
I was just thinking, when I went to Arlington, the committee that sat down with me to talk about things did something similar to this. They, they had already seen my resume. They heard me preach, all those things. But what they said to me, and they all agreed on it, and said the church had agreed to this, was they wanted someone to come in, their next pastor to come in and lead them through a building program, and here were the reasons why. And they gave me all the reasons why they felt like a new building was necessary. And it does bring a certain kind of motivation to you that, here's a church that's thought through some things that could be really helpful to me coming in. There's no guesswork.
Right.
At least about this part of the process. There were other things that had to come up that I had to deal with, but I thought that was just insightful of them, that they had thought through that. The church had said, here's what we're looking for, help us find that person.
Yeah.
And in the first 2 years, we built a building.
Right.
So, that was part of the initial plan. I think it has some value, and I understand the fears. Listen, I understand, when a church has operated a certain way for a number of years, and I don't know, since 1849, how much has changed, but I feel like quite a bit has changed over that period of time. But I do know that if it's not gone about the right way, in the right spirit, that you can get a lot of pushback and a lot of disappointment and a lot of a feeling of, I don't want to do this anymore. kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, I understand all the sides of it, because I've experienced all the sides. We did change the structure of our church, but I was there for 30 years. And we did that. It took about a 5-year period to actually do that the right way. But it was the last 15 years, the best ministry years of my life were when we changed the structure of our church.
So David's not going to invite me back.
Probably not.
Oh goodness. Well,
I'd like to hear from David.
yeah, absolutely.
We haven't heard from him yet.
I think that this is great, but I think if this was something we were gonna do, it should have been, we didn't know about it, but we should have done it before we selected a pastor search committee that has a very specific obligation to this church.
Right.
And I have to agree with Wes that I don't see how the pastor search committee can push this forward. Whether I like it or not isn't the point. I
Right.
don't see how this committee can do that. And I don't think the congregation, we would have to do an amazing sales job. And I think that we would get a lot of pushback of, what do you mean we're gonna just put off selecting a pastor to, I don't think it would fly. I'm not trying to be
No, I
Dr.
get
No.
Yeah.
That's just what I feel. And my grandchildren love this church and they love everything about it. And same for my son and my daughter-in-law. And my daughter-in-law had to move from a church that she loved, but she didn't do that just to go along with the Wisnitz. She really loves this church and has taken an active role here. As far as our system goes now, I look at what happened with 2 problem pastors, and the system, in my opinion, worked well because our church stayed together. We didn't split. I don't know that we lost. I guess we did lose a couple of members, maybe from each one of these, but I couldn't tell you who they were. It seemed like the system that was in place took care of this. I'm not trying to be negative. I just know what the church is expecting of us right now.
Right.
And I feel like we have to deliver on that. I feel like a pastor coming in is going to want to have the freedom to present their own God-inspired vision on where we should go and what we should do. I feel in a way that, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be negative.
David.
I feel in a
You're not gonna hurt
way
my
that
feelings.
you're handcuffing and saying, we want you to be the pastor and we want you to do this, this, and this. Well, what about that pastor's vision? What about what God led on their heart to bring to First Baptist Church of Salisbury? I don't think we're falling on the downside of the plateau. I think that we are in a position where we could possibly take off and see growth again. I really do. And when we're talking to these candidates, I don't see us as a church in decline. I see us as a church on the launching pad. I really do. And I think any pastor who comes here is darn fortunate to get this job. And I think they're coming to a church that is in a really good place. And abuse spouse comment notwithstanding, that there was truth to that, but I see the potential. And when I talk to these candidates, or when we talk to them, I'm very positive. I think you're going to come to a great church. We're giving you a great situation you can step right into. And that's how I feel about it. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
I'm not being negative towards what you
No,
said. I
no, no,
agree
no,
with it.
no,
I'm just trying to
No.
see what I think is the reality of where we are at this moment. And here I'm talking again. The pushback we got on Jacob, it was not a lot of people.
Right.
In fact, if he had come, most people probably would have said, fine, we trust the committee, sure.
Right.
But it was enough to where it caused us to step back.
Right.
And that's kind of what happened. But it was a handful of people.
Yeah.
I'm really done.
Well, at the end of the day, these are just some ideas. These are just some ideas for you guys to think about, because the person that you ultimately want to grow the church is going to ask the questions that I've asked tonight. He's going to say the things that I've said tonight. He's going to share those concerns that I've shared tonight. And I think you will make his life a lot easier if you can fight some of those battles before he gets here. Because if he has to fight those, if he has to report to 12 people, I'm just going to be honest. That's lunacy. That's crazy. So if you fix if the only thing that comes out of tonight is you fix that, that would be a huge win.
And, really, in the pastoral contract, it just says, he will be the spiritual and administrative leader of the church and shall work in a spirit of cooperation with the deacons and trustees. I haven't seen anything where it says.
Right.
Right.
Answer to.
Yeah, there's nothing that says answer to.
Is there an understated, just kind of the way that the congregation works, that he reports though to the trustees? Is there just because he's
I think probably the way that would, and I don't really know because I've only been here at the church for a little over a year, and then been in the interim part of this, and I meet with trustees every month. I don't think there would be any kind of issue, until a lot of money needed to be spent.
Mm.
And I think that's where the issues would come
Right.
in. I'm just saying that's usually where issues get
Yeah.
focused, is when there's money that's needed for $100,000 to be dumped in the children's area, or a lot of questions come then, and then more supervision comes as a result of that, because people want to know how.
Yeah, I mean,
money's
I don't
being
remember a single time when I was a trustee where any of the trustees were sort of in the ear of the lead pastor.
Okay.
But I can see where it could be a problem at some other churches, but I don't know of any situations
Yeah.
where, the trustees are like, you're gonna do this because I'm a trustee.
Right. Yeah.
spent.
Yeah.
I've never seen it, but,
They dealt professionally when we had issues with the two pastors that we did. They stepped in and did what they needed to do.
But conversely, my dad is a pastor, nearly had heart attacks many times after the deacons meeting of the 12 deacons who
Oh,
were also
yeah.
the trustees and everything else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you felt that. There.
and I think to Steve's point, I think a lot of that is based on, financially,
Yeah.
debt-free.
Yeah.
Money is not tight, so there's not really, any super hard decisions to be made.
Yeah.
As long as the pastor's.
Yeah.
On the same page with the congregation.
It's good. Well, how can I pray for y'all?
I think it is a possibility to come up with these ideas to bring before the church that, hey, we see this as a good thing. We need to not reinvent ourselves, but how to improve and
Mhm.
to be on the trek forward, to be ready for a new pastor, to be open to. I think there's a way to just present the idea of that. Like in the past, we did a survey kind of right after Kenneth left. Did we not do something like that? Kind of along those lines, like reevaluate where we are and where we want to go as a church.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think anything like that could help, especially with your leaders. I've seen this work well. If you just call the deacons and trustees together, put them around round tables and have a session similar to this of, you don't need to include everybody in the church, but your most, people that are doing all the heavy lifting every week, your Sunday school teachers, your workers, volunteers,
I do think it would be helpful to get more minds thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we just put him in front of the trustees and let him get down.
Yeah. But seriously, take this, abbreviate it, and take this to the trustees. It wouldn't be all this, but it would be enough for them to understand.
The stuff's gotta change
Yeah.
for the church to change.
Well, and I think it'd make your job easier. I think it would make y'all's job a lot easier because as a team, if you kind of knew this is the direction that we feel like we needed to go for some, even if it's a light version of revitalization, I mean, that's going to be music to his ears. I mean, he's going to be like, yes, that's incredible that they already are thinking that way, because I'm already thinking that way. I think that could be helpful, but let me know how to help. I'd be glad to help any way I can. I love the church. I want to see it be successful. And I've been in both. I've been in churches with this structure, and I've been in churches for the last 17 years with a very growth-minded structure. And I've lived in both of those. And it did put me in the hospital. And I would not want that to happen with your new guy. So, can I pray for y'all? David, it's your meeting. Is there anything else you feel like you need to?
So do we contact these guys or not? Do we now not contact them? I need to know what we're doing. I need to know if we're talking to people or if we're now not talking to people. We had sort of said we were going to be setting up interviews, but if everything's going to change, then why would we do that? Is that what you're seeing? I need to know. I don't know what we're doing right now. Anybody?
I don't see any problem with talking to those four guys.
Well, I think, talking with more people maybe gives us a new perspective about how to talk to them. Help us listen better to what they're saying. And, because they're gonna have ideas about the direction they wanna go with a new area of ministry. And I think that can tell us a whole lot
Right, just like
about
talking to
whether or
Jacob
not
was
we
very helpful.
we're interested.
Okay. Y'all, let me throw this out there. I have hired church staff for many years. I've hired pastors. I coach pastors. I will gladly screen your candidates for you, because they're not. I know the secret handshake. I speak their language. They, like I can kind of tell you what you're getting. I can do some assessments with them. I do that in my coaching practice. I'm going to tell you if you're getting an action or you're getting a strategic thinker, or if you're going to get somebody that's daydreaming in his office all day. Like I can kind of be a kind of cheat code for you and just kind of help you figure out. So if you do land on somebody that you feel like, oh man, Joe's pretty good, we kind of like him, I'll be glad to have a few conversations with Joe, sanctioned by the church, and I can ask the questions and tell you what you're getting, so that there are no surprises. I mean, I just for you guys to think about, pray about, but
I think that would be helpful, because in some ways I feel unqualified to ask the right question that I'm, like, with the state questions that our church created, the need to ask certain
Right.
things, I feel a little more emboldened to ask those things.
Right.
I never would have dreamed of
Right.
before, but, that would, I think a good idea.
I mean, if you think about your industry, you know all the nuances about your industry to ask, because you know it so well. I know that about my industry. And so I'll be glad to, if that's helpful for you, once you land on somebody you have some hope about, and feel like I can do a deeper dive with him. And with me being a pastor too, he's going to talk differently to me than he does to you, which is a good thing. And so I'll make that available. Just call me if you need me. Another thing we could do is, if you just wanted to kind of double click on everything we've talked about tonight, if you wanted to do another session together and you wanted to just say, hey, what are the top 5 priorities of our church for the next 5 years? Even if we just did that, and there was some agreement, we could get some agreement here in unity among what you guys feel like is necessary. That way, when you're meeting with Joe as a team, we really feel like these 5 things need to be done in the next 5 years. What does that look like to you? It's kind of what Steve said. We need you to build a building in 2 years. Can you do that? You know, that kind of thing. So we could do something like that too.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful and very much appreciated.
Glad to help.
Anybody, anything else for the good of the cause? Do you want to close?
Yeah.
Doing that?
Absolutely. God, thank you for this amazing church that was established so many years ago, and just with a heart for this community, and that is just, God, you're doing some great things with this church. I feel it when I'm here and I see it, and I just pray for this team, and God, that you would just give them wisdom on how to lead in these next steps. And you know the pastor you want for this spiritual family, and I just pray, God, that in your sovereignty, that you would connect those two when the time is right. And I pray that this team could help give him some clarity about the priorities of the church for the next 5 years. And Lord, that your Holy Spirit would just do what it does, and help us see that unity and agreement among the team. And Lord, give them courage, because I'm sure they may get flack from people that are in the congregation of why this may be moving slow, and give them the words to say and the compassion and empathy for people who just don't understand the heaviness, the delicateness, the regrouping, and just the clarity that this team is trying to get with your help. So God, just bless them and help them, give them wisdom in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you all. I'll let you know what I find out about next week. If none of those guys can do it, then I'll let you know. But as of now, if you can be here next week at 6:30, be here. I'll let you know if that won't work.
Whatever. If you don't mind, if I could get your card back, that'd be awesome.